No one on Flight 712 expected anything unusual. It was supposed to be ordinary, so ordinary that no one would remember it. A routine domestic flight, clear skies, a smooth route, the kind of journey people forget the moment they land. The cabin hummed softly with the familiar sounds of normal life. A young couple laughed quietly over shared earbuds, watching a movie on a tablet. Two children argued over the armrest before their mother gently separated them. A businessman in a gray suit typed rapidly on his laptop, already thinking about the meeting waiting for him on the ground. An elderly woman flipped through a worn paperback, stopping every few pages to glance out the window and smile at the clouds. Nothing felt wrong, nothing looked wrong. Row 18, seat A, Lily Carter, 18 years old, sat perfectly still. She clutched a spiral notebook tightly against her chest, her fingers pressing so hard the edges bent slightly. Her leg bounced uncontrollably as she stared at the seat in front of her, trying to calm her breathing. This was her first solo flight. No parents beside her, no familiar voice to reassure her, just rows of strangers and the endless sky outside her window. She wasn't afraid of flying, at least. That's what she kept telling herself. She had flown plenty of times before with her family, but being alone felt different. Every sound felt louder, every vibration felt more noticeable. She glanced down at her notebook. Inside were handwritten notes, college schedules, reminders, random thoughts scribbled during sleepless nights. It was her anchor, something familiar in a place that wasn't. The plane cruised smoothly at 0 feet, sunlight spilling through the oval windows. The seatbelt sign flicked off with a soft ding, and a collective relaxation passed through the cabin. Lily finally allowed herself to breathe. Almost there, she thought. Then, bang, the entire aircraft jolted violently. Not turbulence, not a small shake. This was different. Passengers gasped as the plane dipped suddenly, trays rattling, overhead bins creaking. A baby began to cry. Someone shouted instinctively. Lily's heart slammed into her chest. Before anyone could even process what happened, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your cap." The voice cut off mid-sentence. The speakers crackled once, then went silent. Passengers exchanged confused looks. Did he just? Someone whispered. A few nervous laughs followed. Someone joked, "Guess we lost signal." But the laughter didn't last, because seconds later the plane shook again, harder this time. And then they saw her. A flight attendant sprinted down the aisle from the cockpit. She wasn't walking fast. She wasn't calmly assisting passengers. She was running. Her face was pale, almost gray. Her eyes were wide with terror, and her hands trembled as she grabbed the seatbacks to steady herself. People stopped laughing. Conversations died instantly. The cabin fell into a heavy, dreadful silence. Lily's stomach twisted. Something is very wrong. The flight attendant reached the middle of the plane, gasping for breath. She turned toward another crew member and whispered something urgent, something that drained the color from the second attendant's face as well. Passengers leaned forward, straining to hear. What's happening? Is everything okay? Why is she running? No one answered. The attendants exchanged one more look before one of them rushed back toward the cockpit. Then the announcement came. The intercom crackled to life again, but this time it wasn't the captain. It was a shaky female voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated." Her words wavered. "We are experiencing an emergency." A wave of fear swept through the cabin. The woman paused, as if trying to find the strength to continue. "Both pilots have collapsed." For half a second, the words didn't register. Then reality hit. Both pilots collapsed. The plane wasn't descending. It wasn't landing. It was still flying. Flying at 0 feet, with 179 passengers and no one in control. Chaos erupted. Someone screamed. Another person began praying loudly. A man stood up before being shouted back into his seat. "No pilots. What do you mean collapsed? We're going to die." Lily felt the blood drain from her face. Her hands began to shake so badly she dropped her notebook onto the floor. She barely noticed as it slid under the seat in front of her. Her chest tightened, her ears rang. Her thoughts blurred into one terrifying realization. This plane doesn't know how to land itself. The flight attendant continued, her voice cracking. "We are contacting air traffic control. Please stay calm. Stay calm." The words felt cruel. The aircraft trembled again, and this time the panic fully took over. People cried openly. Some clutched their loved ones, others stared straight ahead, frozen. Lily pressed her palms against her knees, trying to stop them from shaking. "This isn't real," she thought. "This can't be happening." Minutes felt like hours, then the intercom clicked again. A different voice came through, stronger, steadier, coming from the ground. "This is air traffic control." The voice echoed through the cabin like a lifeline. "We are aware of the situation. We are here to help." A fragile hope flickered among the passengers. Then came the question that changed everything. Is there anyone on this aircraft who has experience flying a plane? The cabin went silent. No screams, no crying, just heavy, suffocating stillness. People looked at each other. No one moved. The businessman lowered his laptop. The laughing couple stopped holding hands. The elderly woman closed her book. Seconds passed, then more. No hands raised, no voices answered. Air traffic control tried again, urgency creeping into their tone. "We need someone to enter the cockpit. Anyone with flight training, military, private, simulator experience, anything." Lily's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. Her mouth went dry, her vision blurred, because something deep inside her was screaming, "You know this." Her father's voice echoed in her mind, memories she hadn't thought about in years, late nights in hangars, cold metal under her fingertips, him explaining instruments, controls, emergency procedures. "You don't need to be fearless," he used to say. "You just need to be prepared." She looked around. No one else was moving. No one else was standing up. The silence was louder than any scream. The intercom crackled again. "If there is no response, we will attempt to guide someone remotely." Remote. From the ground, Lily swallowed hard. Her hands shook violently now. If no one goes, she realized, everyone dies. Her mind screamed at her to stay seated, to be quiet. She was just a student, just a girl on her first solo flight. But her body moved before her fear could stop it. Slowly, almost painfully, she raised her hand. At first, no one noticed. Then the woman beside her gasped, "Wait, what?" Heads turned, eyes locked onto Lily. She felt exposed. Small, terrified, but she didn't lower her hand. Her voice barely came out. I've never flown a commercial plane," she said, her words trembling. "But I know the basics. My dad, he taught me." The flight attendant rushed toward her, eyes searching her face. "Can you help us?" she asked desperately. Lily's throat tightened. She nodded, and in that moment, at 30,000 feet above the earth, an 18-year-old student unknowingly stepped into history. Lily had never flown a real plane. That truth echoed in her mind like a warning siren as she stood in the aisle of Flight 712, every eye in the cabin locked onto her. Her legs felt weak, as if the floor beneath her might disappear at any moment. She wasn't a pilot. She wasn't trained. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was just an 18-year-old student who had raised her hand because no one else had. But what the passengers didn't know, what even Lily tried to forget, was that her childhood had been shaped by airplanes. Her father had been an Air Force mechanic. He never flew the jets himself, but he knew them better than most pilots ever would. He knew every wire, every system, every warning light. And when Lily was small, too small to even reach the pedals, he would take her with him to the hangars late at night. She remembered the smell, first fuel, metal, oil. Then the sound, tools clinking, engines cooling, distant echoes bouncing off steel walls. While other kids fell asleep to bedtime stories, Lily fell asleep on a workbench, listening to her father explain instruments like they were characters in a story. "This tells you if you're climbing or falling," he'd say, tapping a gauge. "This one tells you if the engine's lying to you. And this." He'd smile, placing her tiny hand on the control yoke. "This is trust." When he died suddenly 3 years ago, Lily stopped going near planes. The memories hurt too much. The hangars felt empty without his voice. She never imagined those lessons would matter again. Until now, the flight attendant guided Lily forward, her hand gently but firmly on Lily's back. With every step toward the cockpit, the weight of what she had done pressed harder on her chest. Whispers followed her. Is she serious? She's just a kid. We're trusting our lives to her. Someone began to cry openly. Another passenger folded his hands and whispered a prayer under his breath. Lily heard everything. Each word felt like a blade. They're right, she thought. I'm not enough. The cockpit door loomed ahead, heavy and sealed like a final boundary between normal life and something irreversible. The flight attendant hesitated before opening it. Once that door opened, there was no going back. She looked at Lily, eyes glassy with fear and hope mixed together. Are you sure? She asked softly. Lily swallowed. Her father's voice whispered in her memory. Fear doesn't mean stop. Fear means focus. I'll try, Lily said. The door opened. The cockpit was nothing like the simulators Lily had once seen online. It was smaller, tighter, filled with blinking lights, buzzing alarms, and screens flashing warnings she'd only ever read about. The two pilots were slumped in their seats, unconscious, oxygen masks dangling uselessly beside them. Lily's heart lurched. This is real. This is really happening. She carefully stepped around them, afraid even to breathe too loudly. The flight attendant helped her into the left seat, the captain's seat. As Lily sat down, the seat felt too big. The controls too close. The responsibility too heavy. Her hands hovered inches above the control yoke. They were shaking, badly. For a moment, the panic almost won. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. The warning alarm sounded like screams. Her vision tunneled, and the world felt like it was collapsing inward. I can't, she whispered. Then the radio crackled. Flight 712, this is air traffic control. The voice was calm. Grounded. Human, Lily Carter, if you can hear me, we see you. Lily flinched. They knew her name. Yes, she breathed. I'm here. There was a pause just long enough to feel like an eternity. Lily, the controller said gently, we'll guide you step by step. You are not alone. Something inside her steadied. Just a little, okay, she whispered. Her hands finally touched the controls. The moment her fingers wrapped around the yoke, something strange happened. The shaking slowed. The fear didn't disappear, but it sharpened like focus snapping into place. The instruments stared back at her. Altitude, airspeed, heading, trust the instruments, her father's voice echoed again. She began calling out what she saw, just like he had taught her. Altitude steady, speed within range, good, air traffic control replied. You're doing exactly what you need to do. Behind the cockpit door, the cabin was silent now, not because people weren't afraid, but because they were listening. Listening for any sign of hope. The flight attendants reassured the passengers as best they could, but all eyes remained fixed forward. Toward the cockpit, toward the girl they had doubted. Some passengers squeezed their loved ones' hands. Some stared at the ceiling, whispering prayers. Some closed their eyes, bracing for the worst. Back in the cockpit, Lily adjusted her posture, forcing herself to sit taller. Her fear was still there, but so was something else, responsibility. Suddenly, a shadow moved outside the cockpit window. Lily turned her head, then she froze. Two sleek, gray shapes sliced through the clouds, flying perfectly parallel with the plane. F-22 fighter jets, close enough to see the markings, close enough to see the pilots inside. Her breath caught in her throat. She said, voice trembling, I see jets. The controller's voice warmed. That's correct, Lily. They're with you. The jets moved closer, steady and controlled, matching her speed, her altitude, her direction. They weren't aggressive. They weren't threatening. They were comforting. They're not here to fight, the controller continued. They're here to protect you. Lily felt tears sting her eyes. For the first time since the emergency began, she didn't feel completely small. The jets dipped their wings slightly slow, deliberate, a salute, not to the plane, to her. The symbolism hit her harder than any alarm ever could. The most advanced fighter jets in the world, escorting an 18-year-old student who had never flown a real plane, Her chest tightened with emotion. "I won't let them down," she whispered. Air traffic control responded quietly, "We know you won't." Lily took a deep breath. The fear was still there, but now so was courage. And somewhere between the blinking lights, the guiding voices, and the silent guardians outside her window, a girl began to believe she might actually save them all. Fuel was low. That single sentence echoed inside the cockpit like a ticking clock. Lily stared at the fuel gauge, her heart sinking with every fraction that dropped. Numbers didn't lie, instruments didn't exaggerate, and right now they were telling her a brutal truth. They didn't have much time. Outside the windshield, the sky that had once looked peaceful now felt threatening. Dark clouds loomed ahead, thick and heavy, swallowing sunlight and turning day into something darker, colder. Weather was bad. Wind buffeted the aircraft, pushing it slightly off course. The plane shuddered metal, groaning softly as if it too understood what was at stake. Lily wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. It came away wet. Sweat blurred her vision, mixing with tears she didn't remember crying. Flight 712. Air traffic control said, their voice steady but urgent now, "We're lining you up for runway 27. You'll see it soon." Lily swallowed hard. "Copy," she replied, though her voice barely sounded like her own. She leaned forward, peering through the glass. And then she saw it. The runway, it looked wrong, too narrow, too short. A thin strip of gray surrounded by endless ground, rushing closer and closer. Her chest tightened. "That's where we're supposed to land, from 30 zeros. 0 feet, it had seemed reasonable." From here, descending fast fighting wind, low on fuel, it looked terrifyingly small. Panic clawed at her throat. "I can't miss," she whispered. "I can't." The alarms beeped softly, not screaming yet, but reminding her that mistakes were no longer an option. Behind her, 179 lives sat in silence. Parents holding children, strangers holding hands, people who had lived full lives, and people who had barely begun. All trusting her. Lily's breathing became shallow. Her hands trembled on the controls again, harder this time. "I'm scared," she said suddenly into the radio. The words slipped out before she could stop them, raw. Honest, human. For a split second, she feared that admitting it meant failure. Then air traffic control responded. Not with commands, not with pressure, but with kindness. "Lily," the controller said softly, "being scared means you care." Her eyes burned. "It means you understand what's at stake." The voice continued, "Now fly." Those two words hit her harder than anything else. Now fly. She closed her eyes for half a second, and in that darkness she saw her father, not sick, not weak, strong, smiling, covered in grease, crouched beside her as she sat in a cockpit for the first time. "Trust the instruments," he'd said. "Your eyes can panic, your heart can panic, the instruments won't." Lily opened her eyes. She forced herself to stop looking at the runway. Instead, she looked at the instruments, altitude decreasing, controlled. Airspeed slightly high, vertical speed too steep, AC, she said, voice steadier now. "I'm coming in fast." Understood. The controller replied immediately. "Reduce throttle gently, ease her down." Lily did exactly that. Not fast, not aggressive, gently. The plane responded, nose lifting slightly. Wind slammed into the side of the aircraft, pushing it left. Correct right. ATC said calmly. She adjusted. The plane drifted back towards centerline. Outside, the clouds broke apart, revealing the ground in terrifying clarity. The runway rushed toward her, too fast, too steep. Her heart hammered in her chest so loudly she thought it might drown out the radio. The F-22s were still there, perfectly aligned, unshaken by the storm. They dipped their wings again, slow and deliberate. A silent salute, not a goodbye, a promise. "You can do this, Lily." ATC said, "You're doing great, stay with us." The altitude warning chimed. Her pulse spiked. "Pull up gently now." The controller commanded. She pulled back on the yoke. Not too much. Not too little. The nose lifted. For a terrifying moment, the plane floated caught between falling and flying. Then the wheels hit the runway hard, the impact thundered through the cabin, jolting every passenger in their seats. Overhead bins rattled, a scream cut through the air, the plane bounced once, Lily's stomach dropped. Easy, easy, ATC urged, hold it. She fought the instinct to yank the controls. She held steady, the plane slammed back down. This time it stayed. The roar of the engines changed as she pulled the throttles back, brakes engaged. Tires screamed against the runway, smoke rising in thick white clouds. The runway lights rushed past. Too fast, still too fast. Brake, brake, ATC said. Lily pressed harder. The plane shuddered violently, protesting, fighting momentum built over miles of sky. Passengers braced themselves. Some screamed, some cried, some prayed louder than ever. Lily's vision tunneled. Please stop, please stop. The end of the runway loomed closer. So close she could see details. Stay on it. ATC said, tension creeping into their voice for the first time. Then the speed dropped. Rapidly, the plane slowed, the runway stretched out again, and finally they stopped. Complete stillness, no alarms, no motion, just silence. For one heartbeat, the entire world seemed to freeze. Lily didn't breathe, she didn't move, she didn't believe it. Flight 712. Air traffic control said softly, reverently, "You are safely on the ground." Lily's hands slipped from the controls. Her body went limp against the seat. She laughed once, a broken, disbelieving sound, then covered her face as sobs tore out of her chest. She had done it. Outside, the F-22s roared overhead one final time, wings rocking in respect before climbing back into the sky. Inside the cabin, the silence shattered. Applause erupted. People cried openly. Strangers hugged. A sound of pure relief filled the air. But Lily heard none of it. She was still staring at the instruments, still trusting them, still trying to understand how an 18-year-old student had just done the impossible. For 1 second there was silence, not the quiet hum of an airplane, not the calm of safety, but the kind of silence that exists only when the world is holding its breath. No one spoke, no one moved. 179 people sat frozen in time, unsure if the ground beneath them was real, or if this was just the final calm before something terrible. Then the truth reached them. They were alive. The cabin exploded. Applause thundered through the aircraft, louder than any engine had ever been. People screamed, not in fear this time, but in relief. Tears poured freely, unashamed, unstoppable. Hands clapped until they hurt. Voices cracked as prayers were shouted to the ceiling. Some passengers dropped to their knees right there in the aisle, whispering thanks to a God they weren't sure they believed in until this moment. Strangers embraced like family. A man in a suit hugged a woman he had never met. 2 teenagers held each other and cried openly. An elderly couple pressed their foreheads together, shaking, knowing they had been given more time than they ever expected. Parents held their children tighter than they ever had before, not just holding them, feeling them, counting heartbeats, memorizing warmth. A mother sobbed as she kissed her daughter's hair again and again. A father wrapped his arms around his son and whispered, "We're okay, we're okay," as if saying it enough times would make it permanent. Up front, behind the cockpit door, Lily Carter collapsed into the captain's seat. Her body gave out the moment the weight lifted. The adrenaline drained away, leaving only exhaustion and emotion so powerful it felt unbearable. Her hands covered her face as sobs shook her small frame. She cried for the fear. She cried for the responsibility. She cried because it was over, and she cried for her father. "I did it, Dad," she whispered through tears. "I did it." The cockpit felt suddenly too quiet. Air traffic control's voice returned, softer now, no longer commanding, no longer urgent. "Lily, you saved them." She shook her head, tears blurring her vision. I just followed what you said." There was a pause. Then the controller replied, voice thick with emotion, "No, you followed what you knew." Lily exhaled shakily. Outside, the roar of engines grew louder. The passengers near the windows gasped. High above the runway, cutting cleanly through the sky, the two F-22 fighter jets appeared one final time. They flew directly over the aircraft, then, slowly, deliberately, they rocked their wings, a salute. Not for a general, not for a decorated officer, not for a soldier with medals on their chest, but for an 18-year-old student who had stared fear in the face and refused to let it win. Tears streamed down Lily's cheeks as she watched them disappear into the clouds. The doors finally opened. Fresh air rushed into the cabin like a blessing. Emergency crews waited outside, but no one rushed off the plane. For a moment, no one wanted to leave the space where a miracle had happened. Then the applause started again. This time it was for her. Lily stepped into the aisle, legs trembling, eyes wide. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready for the standing ovation. She wasn't ready for strangers reaching out to touch her hand. She wasn't ready for the words being thrown at her from every direction. Thank you. You saved my baby. You saved my life. A woman fell to her knees in front of Lily, sobbing, gripping her hands. My son is getting married next month, she cried. Because of you, I'll be there. Lily froze. She didn't know what to say. What do you say when someone tells you that your courage gave them a future? She just hugged her. One by one, passengers passed her, each with a story, each with tears, each with gratitude too big for words. A little boy stopped in front of her, holding his mother's hand. Are you a superhero? He asked softly. Lily knelt down so they were eye to eye. No, she said gently, I was just scared. The boy smiled. My dad says being scared and doing it anyway is how you know you're brave. Lily laughed through her tears. When she finally stepped off the plane, flashing lights greeted her, cameras, reporters, microphones. The world had already started telling her story, but Lily didn't hear the questions. She didn't see the headlines forming. She stood still on the tarmac, staring at the sky. Somewhere up there, her father had once worked with planes like this. Somewhere up there, she imagined him smiling, quietly proud, never surprised. Later, when asked how she did it, Lily's answer was simple. I remembered what I was taught, she said, and I trusted myself. That day, history didn't remember a disaster. It didn't remember panic. It didn't remember fear. It remembered a choice, the choice of a young girl who raised her hand when everyone else was silent. The choice to try when failure meant everything. The choice to believe that courage doesn't come from age, rank, or title. It comes from heart, and the world learned something it would never forget. Heroes don't always wear uniforms. They don't always look strong, and they don't always know they're heroes until the moment demands it. That day at the end of a runway and the beginning of 1,000 futures, an 18-year-old student proved that heroes can come from anywhere. The end.